Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this Wednesday college football and basketball roundtable. We have a lot to talk about today. We'll start off with Dan Mathews, executive producer over in Atlanta, Southern Sports Today with Chuck Oliver, followed by Doug Dean out of Birmingham, AU Daily Dose. We'll get his take on what's going on down in Auburn and around the SEC and college football. He always has a lot to say. He's a great writer. Again, thanks about what he says because he's written it many times. I will start off hour number 2. I'll go down to ESPN Coastal in Savannah, Georgia with Ben Troupe, Gator All-American, 5 years in the NFL. Man, this guy has great takes on what we talk about, and that is college and pro sports. And he's also a great man, has a book out. You ought to get it on Amazon, Uncommon and Unfinished. His story of his life, and it's ever evolving. He's young. He's only like 40. So Ben Troupe, looking forward to that. And then we'll head to Atlanta. Tommy Kane, the All-ACC report, checking in. What's going on? Hey, you look in the top 25 rankings. Where's Duke? Where's UNC? It's weird. Virginia's up there. Clemson is atop the ACC. It's a strange world we live in, but it's transition. Coach K stepped out, second year of Hubert Davis. And, you know, Hubert got North Carolina last year pretty darn far. And it just, you know, didn't quite win the national championship, but a great first year. We're here Monday through Saturday. Follow us always, www.sidelines.live, 680thefan.com, the podcast park in Atlanta. And also Radio Alabama, Kicks 96.3 down in Alexander City and Lake Martin. And Sports Radio 104.7 FM up in Cookeville, Tennessee on the Cumberland Plateau. We're building sidelines every day because we have great guests. And Dan Mathews, again, a lot going on in college football and basketball. But I want to get your take on what happened just this past weekend in the NFL. If you were surprised by the teams that are there and what you think is going to end up happening, who's going to end up in the Super Bowl?
We'll start with the first part first. It's hard to bet against Joe Cool, isn't it? I mean, I saw it back in 18 and 19 at LSU. He's continued it on to the NFL, had a hell of a run last year. And, boy, that team, they didn't look scared going into Buffalo whatsoever. As a matter of fact, they looked like they were the team that knew we're playing really good football right now. And that's powerful this time of the year. So I think that we're probably looking at them, if I'm being honest, because, you know, a high ankle sprain and the way that Patrick Mahomes looked last week, that's going to be tough. And this is a pretty good Cincinnati defense that can get after the quarterback too, with Sam Hubbard and that crew. So, you know, I really like Cincinnati, and this, so does Vegas too. I mean, it opened as a Kansas City line, but all of a sudden, I mean, I haven't checked it since, but yesterday afternoon when I looked at it, 2.5 for Cincinnati. So I think that kind of shows you how people, at least the public, is looking at this game. And then the other one, I think it's going to be a really good one between San Francisco and Philadelphia. I think both teams are playing really good football. Brock Purdy's an awesome story, but I mean, I really like Philadelphia at home. They've been tough to beat at the link this year. And, you know, Nick Sirianni's got that team believing. So if I had to guess right now, I would say we're looking at a Bengals-Eagles Super Bowl in Arizona in a couple of weeks.
What's the over and under on the number of people that you heard about Jalen Hurts? There's no way he'll ever make it in the NFL. His throw in motion, his mechanics, they're just not right. And here he is on the verge of getting his team to the Super Bowl. And you know, he's a pretty logical choice for a lot of people for NFL Player of the Year.
Yeah, he's had a hell of a year. And I think he's also, too, just been a guy that, you know, we talked about this a lot with Stetson Bennett. I think we got to throw Jalen Hurts in the same category of, you know, you think to yourself, you know, what's the right way to handle yourself? I mean, you know, he had all of the accolades of SEC Player of the Year and everything of the such. And then, you know, he gets it taken away from him at Alabama. He doesn't complain. He doesn't, you know, throw a fit. He bides his time, graduates from the school, and then says, my time here at Alabama was great. I'm going to finish my career at Oklahoma. And he did. And he took him to a college football playoff semifinal. He also improved as a player during those times. I mean, I think that a lot of credit needs to go to the work that Dan Enos and also Mike Locksley did with him during that season at Alabama, because when he went to the bench and then came in against Georgia in that SEC championship game, I think everybody can agree he was a different quarterback.
Yeah.
He was one that, he dropped back, he surveyed the field, he went through his reads. And I think there were a lot of people who probably looked at each other during that time and said, wow, this is a different guy. And I think that showed the NFL too. And he even showed it at Oklahoma as well, that he could be very much a downfield passer and he could be effective and he could make plays. And he's done so. And then it's also too, you look at it with his team. It seems like they go out of their way to talk about just what a dynamic leader he is. And, he had the line earlier on in the season about what's your temperature and everything. And I loved Michael Irvin was even like, I sat up straight when I heard that, that's Michael Irvin. That's one of the largest hype men in the game of all time, talking about, how that even got to him. But he's a really easy guy to root for, because he's about the work. And I think that's the number one thing that, if you're someone who shows that you're a worker and that you don't let other things bother you, to me, in my book, that's a really easy player to root for.
Yeah, and he's from Channelview, Texas, a suburb of Houston, and I've been told by one of my Alabama friends that knows what goes on down there, and he said at the time Burton Burns was the running backs coach at Alabama, who was the primary recruiter, I believe, for Jalen Hurts and Lane Kiffin, and they had to work pretty hard to get Nick Saban to bring him in. Of course, he came in January, and he's a weightlifting freak, just a great athlete, but a fierce competitor. And you're right. He didn't go throw a pout fit and just try to, be a cancer in the locker room. He's a team player. And even though he went to Oklahoma for his fourth year and he had 4,500 yards passing, I think I still consider him an Alabama man. And he has got, to me, the same story, like you say, Stetson Bennett. Why do people want to get in the way of a guy that has led his team to back-to-back national championships? He's not the only reason they've won it, but so many people look at him, they look at Jalen Hurts, they're not tall enough, or they're not this or not that. Let the game and the free market figure it out, right?
Yeah, and that's funny too. You bring up about the old, Twitter argument right now of, is Jalen Hurts an Alabama guy or is Oklahoma guy? I consider him to be an Alabama guy.
Yeah,
he got his degree from there. He had most of his success there. He had most of his history there. Now the flip side of that is, the other part as well is Joe Burrow an LSU guy, or is he an Ohio State guy? He's an LSU guy in my book.
Yes.
Even though, look, I said this too. There's still room for Ohio State to claim him, but it's just also though too. I said, I think you're just claiming him as being somebody who got their degree from Ohio State. You're not claiming him as somebody who, they made their mark at a certain school. Is there something to say that Burrow couldn't have done that at Ohio State if he had stayed? Maybe, but we'll never know, because he went on to LSU and he did what he did in the final 2 years of his career in college there. So I think there's that. I think it's just, it's something. Here's what I've kind of learned over the years in this business, Rob, is I've learned that people don't necessarily want to work hard for their opinions. They want to be validated. They want for it to not necessarily be that tough to craft and put together and figure out. So that's why you get the arguments against Stetson Bennett. That's why you get the arguments against Jalen Hurts, is because we've been told for a long time that a quarterback needs to be 6'3" or taller, and that they need to have a certain amount of arm strength. They need to have certain look to them and all of these other types of things. And both of these guys don't fit that category, but it's also too, neither necessarily did Joe Montana. And we saw how that went. Neither necessarily did Drew Brees. And he had a hell of a career. We've seen countless quarterbacks that I think, if nothing else, if you're a coach or a talent evaluator out there and you can cut through all the minutia of this, well, they don't have the look. I think my response to them would be, what the hell does that mean? Neither of these other guys, but they played the position at a high level and played it incredibly well. So I think that people look for the ability to parrot And that's what we are led to is Stetson Bennett can't play. Jalen Hurts can't play. And then a simple why is asked back to them, and you get a blank look.
Yeah, well, it's because they look at quarterbacks like Peyton Manning, John Elway. They look at the big 6'4", 6'5" guy, and they think that's what you've got to be. But again, when you look at a guy like Stetson Bennett, who ran through the SEC, he and his Georgia teammates, it's not just him, but he kept his cool under pressure, and they tried to run him off. I mean, he left one time, went to Jones Community College. He came back. They still tried to run him off. Tony Barnhart talked on the show last week about speaking to last summer to the Georgia College of Business students in the master's program, and a number of them were like going, seriously, you don't think we can win with Stetson Bennett? And he's like, give me a break. But there are lots of people that are so hard-headed, they look at that. And then, again, Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy, Tom Brady, 199th pick in the draft, 7th rounder. But you just got to look at the story that these guys have, and that says everything. Stetson Bennett is a tough individual. Jalen Hurts, man, he had to walk away from Alabama having been the starter and lost in that national championship game. They won, but he wasn't getting it done. He was replaced by a freshman, and he never pouted. That's the ultimate teammate. It's him and Stetson Bennett. Give me more guys like that any day of the week.
No, absolutely. I mean, and look, I get what, all those other guys that fit the profile that people think are a great quarterback have done. And I get what the law of averages are in that regard. But at the same time, though, too, I mean, don't count yourself out and don't, close yourself off to the exceptions either. I mean, I think if nothing else, I think more than anything, if you're sitting there on day 3 and you're saying to yourself, we could use a backup quarterback, why not give Stetson Bennett a look? Why not? Why not in the 5th or 6th round, give him a look, get him into camp? And who's to say that he doesn't come in there and you're like, wow, you know what? This guy can actually play. I don't see the downside of doing that. And, people, you're wasting a draft pick. What would you be getting at that point anyway? I mean, if you're drafting at that point in the draft, guess what? You're drafting somebody that you're just hoping can be a contributor in the NFL. There's no guarantees that guys drafted in those rounds get cut all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you're thinking about this, the first round, everything changed after the April of 2009 April of 2010 versus April of 2011. Sam Bradford comes out of Oklahoma, the number 1 pick in the draft, 4-year, $78 million deal. The next year, Cam Newton comes out, number 1 pick from Auburn on the heels of a national championship. He gets a $22 million deal. That Jaden Rashada deal supposedly was $13.6 million to Florida. You talk about a ton of money for someone who hadn't even done anything. And then you've got people questioning, would Stetson Bennett be able to make it in the NFL? Or they questioned, and I'm sure they still do, Jalen Hurts. So, yeah, you're right. Just some people just they're not willing to give people – I guess they're not willing to think outside of their comfort zone of what they think a quarterback should be. All right, quick question before we go to the break, and then when we come back, I have a couple more for you if you can do it. But on the Atlanta Braves situation, Billy Roberts and Frank Duffy and all the people that, you and I know that are Braves fanatics. I call them Bravesologists. Budget-wise, Liberty Media doesn't spend the money. I don't know if they have it or if they just don't want to spend it compared to, say, the Dodgers and some other teams. Do you see that changing?
In terms of them spending?
Yeah.
They're going to do what they've continued to do. It's worked. It's a proven model that Alex Anthopoulos believes in of you don't want to have a significantly higher paid guy than, a bunch of other players where then it makes you kind of have to be creative on the back end and try to find cheaper guys in order to make a competitive roster. So I think they're going to continue doing it the way that they are. And the model's worked in terms of them extending guys earlier and also, being able to have those guys stick and stay for some time. So I don't think that they're going to break what they've been doing. I mean, I guess when Shohei Ohtani comes around, maybe that changes, and maybe, Liberty Media says, well, that's intriguing of what we could add to our bottom line if we had a guy like that in our town. But It does not seem like that's going to be the case. And I think the last 2 off seasons show you that with Dansby Swanson and also with Freddie Freeman both not being here.
Yeah, because I think Dansby Swanson got 177 million going to the Cubs.
Yeah, I mean, you give that to a defensive first shortstop who had a career year at the plate last year. I mean, I think more than anything, it was kind of I don't even know if nostalgia is the right word, but of him being a hometown guy. And, that's more than anything what, really probably got some people to say, man, we can't be losing Dansby Swanson. But I think the Braves looked at it and said, do we feel like we have a good enough option in Vaughn Grissom and somebody that can become that guy, kind of their version of Jeremy Pena? Or do we feel like we need to go outside for a cheaper veteran option? And right now they're saying, let's go with Grissom.
Yeah. And you think about the money that is spent. Of course, we remember what George Steinbrenner was like with the Yankees, and they seem to have unlimited amounts of money, and they still do. But what's it been, 20 years, 21 years since the Yankees won a World Series?
Yeah, I mean, spending money doesn't correlate to winning. I mean, you look at it, what the most successful organizations are doing right now. They're not the highest. They spend, don't get me wrong. Like, I'll give you a good example. People know how I feel about the Houston Astros. The Astros spend on Jose Abreu this offseason, but they don't break the bank. I mean, they could have possibly gotten emotional and spent emotional money on Justin Verlander, but they said, no, let's make a savvy baseball decision here. We like what we have with Framber Valdez and Christian Javier and Jose Urquidy and a lot of the
Dan, hold those thoughts. We're going to take a quick break. I got some more questions on it because I love getting into this, the money part of it. Look at Texas A&M as another example. They have money, but they don't have the wins. More after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
And I think that's a great explanation of what is going on with, some teams are willing to spend a fortune on one player, and then you have to be creative on the back end. That's a great way to look at it. And now I want to switch gears, go back in here to college with NIL. We talked about the Jalen Rosada. He's not going to be a Gator. And we had Franz Beard of GatorBaitMedia.com. He and Buddy Martin are on a lot with us. And he said that they gave the kid a month to go out and try to counter that offer. And he didn't get anywhere close to it. I think Florida had lowered it down to $1 million a year as long as he stayed. And bottom line, maybe he goes to Washington, Franz said, for $250,000, maybe $500,000. Than Arizona State, Arizona. But you get out on the West Coast, they're not really into spending that much money on NIL. Look what they spend or don't spend on facilities. So it's changing. Are you hearing any stories at Georgia or Georgia Tech or Clemson over in that area? And of course, you're nationwide, LSU, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, anywhere where there's just tons of money. I think there's a lot less than we're being told, but I'm curious what you're hearing.
The only one that comes to mind for me that I've been able to, believe is the case is A.D. Mitchell leaving to go to Texas. I mean, there's also, too, the talk that he wanted to be closer to his daughter in Houston. But then it was also last week that it was a thought that he could go out to USC. And I said, oh, I guess all of a sudden raising his daughter in USC was something else, or in Los Angeles is something else that sounded like a plan to him. But, he's somebody that accomplished a lot in his couple of years at Georgia. And I understand that some people are upset about what he did, but I think for the most part in this new age of name, image, and likeness, there's enough people that said, hey, look, he came to Georgia. He did, enough to help out this program, and, wish him nothing but the best at Texas. I mean, he wasn't sure what was going to happen with Todd Monken. He wasn't sure what was going to happen at quarterback. And you also have a loaded, loaded receiver room as well that's coming back. So maybe he wasn't going to get as much production.
Yeah, Dan, look, sorry about that. We had, I just now saw your text. My phone, the Wi-Fi was completely out here. So I just read what you put on there. Holy cow. Sorry about that. But tell people how they can follow you in the show y'all do every day. I'm just now seeing all that.
Yeah. At Dan Mathews, ATL, 1T and Mathews. Follow me on the Chuck Oliver show as well, hosting today, actually. So speaking of Jaden Rashada, we're going to talk that with Andrew Spivey of Gator Country at the top of the show. Also, too, going to be talking with Clint Lamb of Bama Insider about what's happening with their coordinator search. And we're going to talk some Texas Longhorns and also Tennessee Volunteers a little bit later today with Eric Kane of VolQuest.
All right, Dan, thank you so much. Look forward to having you on again soon.
All right, appreciate it.
Okay. All right. A lot of stuff going on, man, in sports. You think technically college football season's over. We've got the first Wednesday in February. We're going to have the national signing date. It's kind of an afterthought now because everybody signs the players in December. That early signing period in December is where 80 or 90% of the players sign. But the portal is another factor. December 5th to I think it was January 18th, we got that going on. But that's over until May. But, we all know that after spring practice, there are going to be plenty of guys that are going to go back into the portal just because they'll see where they do or don't fit into the team going into the summer workouts. And also it's tough. I'm telling you, you've got to have an accompanying website or the crawl at the bottom of your TV screen or your favorite team's website, Georgia, Auburn, Tennessee, whatever, just to keep up with your roster. I mean, ask yourself, how many of us can name 2 and 3 deep depth chart and name 15 players, 20 players on the roster? Like it used to be, you could just roll it off your tongue easily. Okay. It's hard. It's very difficult to do that. And what we have going on now, with guys transferring as quickly as they are, again, you have a tough workout, tough mat drills or whatever. You got to worry about watching, ESPN Sports Center and seeing on the crawl a bunch of guys going into the portal. But hopefully that's going to correct itself already. And that's why I asked Dan about Major League Baseball. And then, of course, NFL, NBA. You start paying one guy or two guys exorbitant amounts of money. You do have to be creative on the back end. How are you going to get everybody else in under the salary cap? So it's fun to me to watch and listen to general managers, player personnel directors, and all that, how they're able to do it. Because every year you're going to be faced with, wow, the draft coming up. Who do we take? You can't. Sometimes they do it, but you've got to be careful about turning away a generational player, someone who's that good. And look right now at San Francisco, Mr. Irrelevant. That's what they call the last pick in the NFL draft. Brock Purdy coming in as a rookie. And he's right now has the 49ers on the verge. If they can beat the Eagles, they're going to the Super Bowl. They got Jimmy Garoppolo is injured. He's trying to come back. All he's got to do is look what happened when Drew Bledsoe got hurt. Tom Brady came in 7 Super Bowls later and 100 years later, it seems. Tom Brady, still out there. I don't think he's retiring. But man, you can be on top of the world. Look at Stetson Bennett. I mean, he's done it. Georgia at age 25. But after they won the national championship last year, most people thought he would just ride off and just write the book, the Hollywood movie. It was all done. He came back, and there were people, Georgia fans and fans of other schools, just college football fans, who couldn't believe it. Why is he coming back? They're not going to win with him. Well, now the only argument really is, was he better as a quarterback this year than he was last year? And was this Georgia team better than last year's national championship team? I'll say this. The opponent that they played, TCU, this year wasn't anywhere close to the opponent they played last year, Alabama, who was the defending national champions. They'd won it in 2020, the year of the virus, with one of the most awesome football teams, offense-wise, I've ever seen. So, look, it's very, very fun to and it's easy for fans to say this guy won't make it, or because he's not tall enough, not fast enough, whatever. You go back and look at the greatest running backs of all time, and look at okay, you look at the greatest running backs, 5'8", 5'9", Barry Sanders. I mean, look at these guys. Emmitt Smith is 5'9", right? So they're not all like Bo Jackson and Herschel Walker, 6'2", 225, 230, can run a 9.500. So we don't talk about that enough. It's always the quarterback. Look at the receivers. Look, you can go across every position. There have not been many. Sam Mills is the 5'9" linebacker that everybody talks about. Great linebacker for the New Orleans Saints at 5'9". You got one that's 5'8" this year, all-time leading tackler, one of them. And we'll see what he does. I think he's going to be in the Senior Bowl. Watch the Senior Bowl. Got to see what Stetson Bennett does. Got to see, Bryce Young. Who knows? Practices start next week. And those practices at the Senior Bowl are some of the most closely watched of any practices of any bowl game. That's obviously an all-star game. It's going to be played Saturday, February the 5th. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's February the 4th. February 4th is when it'll be played. But I'm anxious to see, and I love to listen to these talking heads when they talk about who are the most draft eligible, the best pro prospects. And don't ever underestimate. Look, you can have $1 million worth of ability and $1.98 worth of desire, drive, and brains, and it ain't going to work out very often. You better have $1 million worth of ability and millions more in desire, heart, drive. That's what you got to have. It's very difficult to make it. And I look at these. That's why we're saying what happens with so many of these NFL players when they're drafted, they're getting all this money. And, in college, you got a strength coach, or a group of strength coaches, the head guy and his assistants. You've got so many people supporting you. I mean, look at the Florida football team picture this year. I mean, honestly, they're more support personnel than there were scholarship football players, it looked like. I mean, how much is enough? But in the NFL, hey, you don't show up for workouts or you don't follow the rules, they fine you. Could be $25,000, could be $50,000. Well, when a guy has a $10 million contract or $20 million, they stop thinking about a lot of that stuff. And the money can get in there and it can cripple you because you're not hungry anymore. And you look around at all of the players that have been paid a ton of money early on. Yeah, it definitely has an effect on them. Okay. And that's why we talk so much about the NIL. and the portal. Well, the portal used to be, hey, you got cut. You wanted to quit. I just don't want to play anymore. My heart's not into it. Well, what are you going to do? You just going to, you don't want to quit. It doesn't look good. So you say you're going into the portal. And when you start doing the audit and you start peeling back that big, ugly scab of the portal, about half these people that are going into the portal, college football players, are still homeless. They're not getting picked up. And if they are, nothing's really changing. The only thing you can change, you can't change your circumstances. You can only change yourself. That's something that I have watched for a long time with college football, basketball, baseball, whatever. You look at the teams last year, Texas A&M and Auburn picked 6th and 7th in the SEC West. Both were in Omaha for the College World Series. Both of them were, along with Arkansas, and of course, Ole Miss, who won the national championship. Now the only question is the Magnolia State, is Mississippi going to pull off a trifecta? Ole Miss went down to Hattiesburg last year and dominated a pretty good Southern Miss team. That was a packed house environment. Ole Miss was on fire. And they were a team that had been number 1 in the country early in the season. They struggled, but they came back to life when it mattered the most. Mike Bianco, 22 years he's been at Ole Miss. A number of people questioning, hey, he's going to be fired. They need to get a new coach. And you name it. They picked out the burial suit. They picked out, they got the shovels ready on his plot. Doesn't work that way. If you're a competitor, treat the word impossible as motivation. Treat the word no as tell me more. That's why, always interested, watch commercials about bashing commissioned salesmen versus salaried people. Well, who's going to take your call at 5:30 on a Saturday morning in a duck blind if you're a customer calling your commission salesman or you're calling the salaried salesman? I think the commission salesman is going to take that call. So when people say, I don't talk to salesmen, you got to ask yourself, well, what do you do? Come on, everybody, life is about selling. But I'm anxious to hear what we're going to get when Doug Dean joins us on this morning from the AU Dose, because if you're an Auburn fan, for instance, you have name me your starting lineup on the offensive line if today or Alabama or Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, Ole Miss, Memphis, Arkansas, you name them. It's very hard to do. You've got Ole Miss 25 players going into the portal at Ole Miss, and I think 12 of them still hadn't been picked up by anybody. Just remember this: once you're in the portal, the university where you currently are on scholarship is under no obligation from that point on to take you back. Remember when you walked away from a good relationship with your girlfriend? If you're a guy, if you're a girl, from your boyfriend, sometimes, be careful with that. Doug Dean, AU Dose. Let's get the talking, man. It is everything is happening so fast. We're going to a break in a couple of minutes, but again, the job Hugh Freeze and this staff are doing at Auburn, in the portal and everywhere. You write about it. Let's talk about it.
Absolutely, and hopefully we will not neglect the great sport of basketball.
Oh yeah,
as the Auburn Tigers defend their 28-game best in the nation win streak in Neville Arena tonight. But yeah, we all understand that Alabama and Georgia and a few others just completed historically incredible national signing classes. So kudos to them. But if you adjust for circumstances, if you will, Rob, I don't know how you could be anything but ecstatic about the late game kind of 2-minute offense recruiting job that Hugh Freeze and his staff did. And it didn't stop on that early signing day period. They continue to bring guys in. And then you get it for the fans that are stargazers, which is a lot of us. You get some lucky breaks like the great strong defensive end Keldrick Falk just got moved up to a 5-star, and he had been the 79th best player. He's 19th now, so Auburn is knocking on the door of being top 15 signing class.
Well, I mean, there were 16 or 17 56th when Freeze got there, and I can't wait to see what happens when this staff has a full year to recruit.
Yeah, imagine, and we'll go to break, but imagine a head coach, and this is a fact. I'm breaking my New Year's resolution about Harsin, Rob, but it's unavoidable. And when you're describing the situation, that a head coach that would get mad at an assistant for being out recruiting instead of back on campus talking ball with his position, coordinator. Unbelievable. Yeah,
it is. Let's take a quick break. We're going to come right back and talk with Doug Dean, AU Daily Dose down in Birmingham. Lots going on in recruiting. We're going to hear more after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Yeah, and you think about Doug in recruiting and Keldrick Falk being moved from 79th to 19th, and that's a big deal. You get a 5-star, other 5-stars are going to see that and go, hey, maybe I ought to go visit Auburn. I know the last couple of years they were closed.
Yeah. And add to it, K and Lee, that's Kane with a K.
Yeah.
The defensive back that Freeze and Co. flipped from Ohio State on signing day. He has made a massive jump, 152 spots to now be number 59 in the nation. We already had Jeremiah Cobb at number 67, and I realize he hasn't signed yet, and you have to keep an eye on Georgia and a few others. Everybody would like that kid, but he said that he just wants to sign with his teammates from that high school in February, so that we won't have to wait long to confirm that. So, again, under the circumstances, for Freeze to come in and go after those kids that many of whom said, I always loved Auburn, but I just couldn't get comfortable with the Harsin regime. Yeah. And it's a very healthy sign that they were able to flip and finish that strong.
Yeah, and I think what you just said, though, about Jeremiah Cobb, and remember the kid Jay Hardy out of McCauley up in Chattanooga said the same thing. He wanted to wait, and turned out he'd already signed with Auburn, and Tennessee was every morning calling him before breakfast and all. And so who knows? But personally, I do not feel comfortable with a player that doesn't sign in December, especially high-profile player like Jeremiah Cobb. But what's interesting is, what is he, 14th, 15th player in the state, but he's the best running back?
Yeah. Everything you're saying is right. But a couple of other positive signs that aren't the class of 23. You may have seen this. We all chuckled at in the state of Alabama. Thompson wins the 7A title with an 8th grader under center. Is that right, Rob? An 8th grader.
Yeah, an 8th grader. Yeah.
Trent Seaborn, who, that's just hard to wrap your brain around. But Seaborn And usually these kids at Thompson, it was like it could be thought of as a feeder program for the Crimson Tide, which, good for them if they've built those relationships. But Trent Seaborn's going to be in Auburn. He tweeted that he'll be in Auburn this weekend to visit with all the coaches. That's class of 2027. And then there are a lot of people believe that the great quarterback converted wide receiver Ryan Williams, who would be a legacy player. He's a commitment to Alabama, class of 2025. Some believe he's already a flip to Auburn. We just haven't heard it officially. So all the signs are there that Hugh Freeze won't win every recruiting battle, and NIL becomes a big force to reckon with. But we have everything in place to have top 10 to 12-ish signing classes any given year. And that's really all you need in the long run.
Yeah. If you do that and then you develop those players, you're going to win a lot of games. But look at Gus's 8 years, probably averaged the 8th best class in the country, but not even close to that in terms of player development. So I like that take on it, man. And then Alvin Henderson, running back out of Elba, Alabama. I think that's another class of 24, 25.
Yeah.
And now you got to wonder, Doug, how many of them are going to reclassify?
Well, yeah, and Henderson, we understand that anything could happen and happen in the 12th hour, as in night before signing day with kids. But that's why I chuckle. We both chuckle, being the old guys that we are, long in the tooth, that they use the term commitment.
Yeah.
And but I've heard that Auburn is in great position with Henderson too, and so props to the coaching staff, especially Cadillac. Can we talk a little hoops, my friend?
Oh yeah, let's go.
So it's congrats to Nate Oates and that Crimson Tide team for vaulting up to second in the nation, and they have a lot of people believe and I wouldn't dispute it. They look like they're playing the most complete ball defensively and especially scoring. They love to shoot the threes. So naturally, a degree of little brother syndrome, if that's not offensive to my Auburn friends, creeps in, where you've got one peripheral vision on how Alabama's doing as they prepare to come to Neville Arena February 11th, which is a Saturday. But Auburn needs to be real concerned tonight, because I've got enormous respect for Buzz Williams. Remember, A&M was a team that got hot in the SEC tourney last year and knocked out that incredible Auburn team that won the regular season going away. We had Kessler and Jabari Davis, but for some reason, and Bruce has talked about it, that team was great in January and most of February, just not great in March. So what will be interesting to watch is, can Auburn move the home win streak to 29, which is phenomenal to be in the SEC and do that.
Oh yeah, I love what you said the other day about the Gonzaga win streak, 75 straight, and look who they were playing compared to who Auburn's playing.
Yeah, they beat Pepperidge Farms and Sara Lee and the always pesky Sisters of the Poor. But but Gonzaga's great. I mean, their team played 100 on Alabama to beat them, and so what you see now is Bruce is bit by bit. If you watch closely, he played a lot more guys in December. I call it the calibration period. You see Pearl do early season, then he finds out who can he rely on, who works well together, and he's giving fewer minutes. He's given minutes to a slightly smaller number. Instead of 10 or 11, it's fewer than that. And boy, has somebody, if Wendell Green in the SEC is not the most valuable point guard for his team and playing lights out the last few games, then I would like to see who's better. And he might be the best point guard in the SEC, period, right now. There's a couple of others that, you could debate, but that, and you see the coming of age of Janai Broome. And by the way, if you want to stir the phones and get lit up on your text, Rob, here's the tell. In this Auburn-Alabama series, 2-game series in Neville, February 11th, and late season in Tuscaloosa, it's in the very last name of Auburn's starting center, Rob, Broome. So one of these teams is going to get the brooms out. I have a feeling the money would be on Alabama to sweep Auburn right now. But it'll be interesting if Auburn can cause Alabama trouble defensively, and with that, the effect of that environment, and find a way to knock off probably number 2, maybe number 1 ranked Alabama February 11th, and all of a sudden things get real interesting in that series.
Yeah, and when talking to Jason Caldwell last week from inside the Auburn Tigers, he said Auburn likes to keep the games in the 60s. That's where they're comfortable. And we start to develop this opinion of the team, but they seem to be growing, and you just hinted on it and referred to it, Wendell Green, the role he's playing. But Auburn has small guards, and we hear all these different narratives, but they're 16-3.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because, and this is a kind of a subjective take of mine, and I'm referring more to a segment of the Auburn fan base that sort of Bruce has spoiled us, especially after 2019, the Final Four run, a team that could just really light it up from 3-point arc. And then last year, a lot of the same with 2 current NBA stars in Kessler and Jabari. This year, this team is slow to win over the fan base. We had guys that were brain donors, as you like to say, living brain donors. Had quit on this team, said we would not make March Madness, which could still happen technically. It's highly unlikely. We look like a 5 or 6 seed right now, but a shot at vaulting up to 4 seed because we're going to get to play some quadrant 1 and 2 teams on our schedule. But I think this team is just aesthetically not very pleasing until the last few games. Now we're starting to do electric things with Green, finding guys for alley-oops, throwing bounce passes the full length of the court for Flanagan to do a one-handed tomahawk slam.
Yeah.
So we're looking better, but we were winning ugly, and fans want this pretty boy 3-point shooting to really believe in their team.
Yeah, look at say Johan Traore, 5-star, he signed with LSU. Then they had that disaster down there, and I think Jason was making that comparison. You look at him, as a 5-star versus Jabari Smith. Well, Jabari, since he was old enough to walk, was playing basketball with his dad, who played in the NBA, of course, played at LSU. And Traore just hadn't played as much, and he's a raw talent. He's a 5-star, but nowhere close to being as a first-year player what Jabari is. But even with Jabari and Walker Kessler gone, Bruce Pearl, he gets every ounce of talent. He squeezes it out of you. And Chris Moore is hurt. When's he coming back? But everybody on this team wants to win.
Moore has been practicing, and he's a game time decision tonight. I think you may see him get, depending on how the game is going, if somebody gets in foul trouble, you may see him get some minutes. But to your point, Rob, and I apologize to your listeners who are not of the orange and blue persuasion, and I'll try to be classy about it. But when Auburn people, for example, or anyone starts to second guess, has Bruce Pearl lost it as a coach? Here's what they're going up against on a resume that we just have never seen at Auburn. The Pearl effect, SEC's winningest program the last 5 years. And that's with the likes of Kentucky and Arkansas and LSU when they were playing well, and others, Texas A&M, Alabama. He's had 3 SEC championships in 2018, 19, and last year. Made a Final Four. Not everyone can boast that, not named Kentucky or Arkansas. First ever number 1 ranking last year, in early 22. Program record 31 straight weeks, Rob, ranked in the AP top 25. And then lastly, the current nation's longest home win streak at 28. So what do we have to do, Auburn fans, those that haven't come around to what this team's ceiling just might be this year? And I would tell you, Rob, what I think Auburn's battling for is to try to win and have enough quality wins and get the committee's attention to avoid the dreaded 5 seed, because as you know, prior to last year, 17 12 seeds have knocked out the stronger seeded 5 seeds since 2010. It's a popular bet or bracket pick, the 12 seed, and that if you go to a 13 seed, that's oddly enough is not as big a winning rate as the 12 seed. So if you're Auburn, you're really hoping to look good enough to somehow get to at least a 4 seed, which won't be easy.
Yeah, well, right now they're the annoying little bracketologist, and are they in, are they out, first in, first out, bubble. Oh, that's all these. I mean, I get it. They're
Early to talk.
It is too early to talk about it. But you look at when Auburn gets to rolling in something like basketball, Alabama is going to come after them, and they're going to get their program going. And you would think Georgia would, but Mike White's got them playing better. They won 1 conference game all of last year. They won 3 this year. But I look at Auburn as, I think a lot of Auburn people are waiting for their rivals to acknowledge, yes, you are good. Y'all are really good. Don't wait on that. Embrace what you got, Auburn. All you can count on is the guy to your left or your right, that's an Auburn fan that believes in you and that team. And I look at Janai Broome, Wendell Green. You look at the talent that Bruce Pearl brings in. What he does is he gets those guys to play together really well. I mean, people in West Memphis, Arkansas, follow every move Chris Moore makes. I mean, they were crushed when he left the state of Arkansas. He was a 3 or a 4-star, depends on the rating service that you look at. But he started 16 games this year on a team ranked 15th in the country. I think you want to talk about a player who's developed. That's Chris Moore. And in his absence, guys like, Lear Bierman from Mountain Brook, 6'4", he's getting more minutes. You're not going to win if you got to play that guy, in my opinion, 40 minutes every night in your starting lineup. I don't think you're going to win the SEC, but he's like a lot of role players we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
Without him, you're not going to win those games.
He hasn't hurt us, and especially when we found ourselves short on bigs, and it was a problem. But as I look at this team, and Bruce has commented on it, the single biggest, if you're limited to one thing that's led to them reeling off some wins and sitting here, what are they, 16-3? It's taking care of the ball. Bruce and the coaching staff have done they've gotten to these players, and especially got the likes of KD Johnson, at times Green. Just because you can drive the lane all the way to the basket doesn't make it a good idea. The rate of getting that ball slapped and turned over, and the other teams got transition points going the other way, is really high. And so they're mitigating risk. They're being smart about valuing the ball. And you see Wendell Green, instead of having to go up when he's right under the basket, he draws the defender to him, and then it's an easy slam for Broome or Cardwell and those guys. And you got to love that. But what we need to happen, and I know Bruce is working on this, if we're depending on Wendell Green to not get in foul trouble, not get dinged up for a long, grueling season, that'll be tricky. So you need Trey Donaldson or possibly KD to really start playing at a high level in case they're needed, especially Donaldson to spell Wendell Green.
Yeah, you get 13 scholarship players. You're lucky if you have 10 or 11. But if you've got 8 or 9 playing a lot, then you can go to 10 or 11. That really helps out down the stretch. But when we come back, I want to talk about Janai Broome, his development, and what he's doing is nothing short of amazing. It's not that he's not a talented player, but I want to find out more about him, because in college basketball in the SEC, we've always had, every team has lots of great athletes. The question is, how many of these great athletes are also great basketball players with a high basketball IQ, court awareness? They've got fundamentals down, free throws. They play defense. They're aware of how many timeouts you've got left. Chris Webber, as great a player as he was, will always be remembered for calling the timeout that they didn't have in the national championship game. More with Doug Dean on Sidelines right after this.
done. Just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Doug Dean, let's talk about Janai Browne. Bruce Pearl, every year, this staff, give all of them, the whole coaching staff credit, but God, they develop players on a level that you just don't see very often.
Yeah, Browne is playing with, I think it's some sort of minor foot injury, but he sure didn't look like he was limited these last couple of games. He had one game that struggled a little. I think it was Mississippi State. But wow, I mean, he's so confident when he gets the ball down in the paint, and he can make spin moves. He rarely misses from point blank range, which was a problem for us at times. Certainly not Walker Kessler, because he was so tall he could just jam it. But Browne gives you a big body. He can give you 25, 30 minutes or even more if needed, and bang around in the middle. And we play some teams that are going to be taller and longer than us. Alabama's one of them, and they're extraordinarily talented. But if they have an Achilles heel, and it's not much of one, it might be when they face a real physical, thick, big body like Browne and Cardwell. So I like this blue collar, if you want to call Auburn blue collar. Bruce has gone to a Final Four with a team that arguably was really just blue collar hard workers, with the exception of how Bryce Browne and Harper came on as 3-point shooters. They had Chuma Okeke on that team, but he got injured before the Final Four run. So I think Bruce loves having a team that's a little, I don't want to say disrespected, but people are skeptical about what the ceiling is. And you ask yourself this: what if by mid-February, Rob, Johan Traore is playing like living up to his billing? And what if Chance Westry comes along and gives you another reliable shooter? All of a sudden, this becomes a really dangerous team.
Well, you're right about those two guys, because as the season goes along, you get more comfortable. I'm sure there's a lot of anxiety. Their heads are spinning. The game, how many times do you have to hear it from coaches in any sport, especially when you're a freshman, how fast everything is? Once you start to comprehend the offensive, defensive system that you're in, it slows down, and you're not running around like your hair's on fire. That's a great point you just made.
And you fans that are into recruiting, I would say continue to be bullish on Auburn basketball under Bruce Pearl. Here's a little data point to support that. The great Aiden Holloway, the guard that Auburn's lone early signee in the 23 class, has been named a McDonald's All-American. And it was rare that you had McDonald's All-American sign with Auburn. That's becoming commonplace now. The most recent McDonald's All-Americans at Auburn, of course, Sharif Cooper, Walker Kessler, Karatni Barber, and Frank Ford were, and then obviously Jabari Smith and now Aiden Holloway. So those are when you start loading up talent like that, and then you can go in the portal to fill gaps, I don't think there's much reason to worry a lot about Auburn staying competitive.
Yeah, and I like it. Hey, Doug, listen, stay with us if you can for a few minutes. We're going to be joined by Ben Troupe, ESPN Coastal down in Savannah, talking more SEC football and the playoffs and NFL and basketball. But I got to tell you, great take on that. And I got several texts from along the lines of what you said. Shoney down in Valdosta makes a great point along the lines of what Doug Dean said. Auburn fans are just not used to a coach that is a good development coach. Bruce Pearl, and I'll tell you another one who's an elite development coach is our man, the pride of Amory, Mississippi, Coach Butch Thompson. they're good. They can develop the players.
Pressure is on Hugh Freeze to pick up that crown jewel of the big sports.
Well, the pride of Coldwater, Independence / Senatobia, Mississippi, the 5-star city, that would be Hugh Freeze, who loves bass fishing, by the way. So, hey, Doug, have you met Ben Troupe before, the big Gator? Played in the NFL 5 years, played for Steve Spurrier and Ron Zook.
Yeah, I'm well aware of the great Ben Troupe, and I'm a fan of yours when you come on the show, Ben, and glad to virtually meet you, if you will. If you ever get near Birmingham, dinner is on me, my friend.
Oh, yes, sir, Doug. I definitely haven't been to Birmingham. The last time I was in Birmingham, I was at UAB. I go into a barbecue spot, and I get some barbecue, and they give me a loaf of bread with barbecue sauce. That was my freaking side, and I'm looking around like, if I eat all this, I'm not even going to, like, that's the point. The point is to eat all, and I get to dip in the eating, and I'm like, I thought I was the only one until I looked around the table. I'm like, he said, we go through a lot of bread at this freaking restaurant. So it's been a while since I've been to Birmingham.
You could only be talking about the great Dreamland barbecue. Yes. That's only a white loaf of bread. It was controversial. Of course, that all began in Tuscaloosa when the place burned down, and I'm sure it had nothing to do with it. They only take payment in cash, if you know what I mean. But in Birmingham, they served side dishes, and it was very controversial.
Well, hey, I'll tell you, that barbecue sauce at Dreamland is off the charts, man. And Doug, while we got Ben on here, I got to ask you this, Doug. What's the best barbecue restaurant in Birmingham, in your humble opinion, as a native Birminghamian? Or what do you call it? What do you call Birmingham's?
I just hate those questions because it's like the most beautiful woman in the history of filmmaking. You know, I'll give me Raquel Welch. So this is just one guy, but I'm a huge fan of Dimitri's Barbecue in Homewood. And it's got I pick up on some notes of Worcestershire and something different on the bar. But a lot of people would swear by Saw's Barbecue. If you want to give them a shot, darn good. And heck, I could name, there's Full Moon Barbecue that people rave about the sauce. And so, I could put 5 or 6 of the barbecue joints in a hat, pull one out, and I'd be perfectly happy that night.
Well, that's a good problem to have, man. I do love it. Dimitri's is that Greek barbecue, Ben. That is something special. Ben, Doug and I have been talking about player development, and with basketball, football, you name it. And, Doug, Ben came out of Swainsboro, Georgia, ended up signing with Florida, played tight end. But Ben, talk to Doug, me, and everybody listening. What happens if you get to a program where you need to work on things, but the coaching isn't there? Do you go out on your own? How's that work? Because a lot of guys come in highly rated, they don't pan out. What are some of the reasons?
A lot of the reasons is because sometimes you just made the wrong decision. I mean, everybody wants to go play big time football, but everything ain't for everybody. I think developmental coaches are better coaches. They take more time to win, but if you give it time, you see what the process has. I mean, people always talk about the great Steve Spurrier, right? They talk about Danny Warfel. Well, you know why Danny Warfel worked? Because he had Shane Mathews. Shane Mathews is the one that started it all. So if I get to sit there and look and see what it takes, I mean, developmental coach, I know you guys are talking about Bruce Pearl. The one thing Bruce Pearl has never given enough credit for is time. He's done it at 2 schools. Did it at Tennessee, and if you don't think they don't take some of the things he done at Tennessee and implement it now. So I know that as a player that took 4 years to figure it out, because college is a whirlwind. There is no ease in process. You get to campus, and it's just really, 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 really fast, from the workouts to the terminology to the nutrition, and it ain't for everybody. Certain guys, they'll either weed you out slowly, or you'll be a guy like me who, thank God, I didn't play as a sophomore, junior, and freshman, because I had the ability, but sports is so much more than ability, and that's what they won't tell you. Unfortunately, my head coach livelihood was on me, my 17-year-old self getting to college. So sometimes you have to develop quicker because of the situation, but if you give it time, that's where the Stetson Bennett's come from. They come from time and development. Yes, he's had the ability. Yes, he ain't a 5-star, but I got everything built up as far as like what we're trying to build here. You surround him with a bunch of talent. Next thing you know, back-to-back national championships, right? So I think that when you think about college athletics, what's not on the time of the coaches and the players is the time needed to develop. Because sometimes as a head coach, they need time to develop. We see the money, right? I mean, shout out to, Coach Josh Heupel getting that new deal. But now you a $9 million coach right behind Kirby, right behind, Nick Saban. And that comes with very, very high expectations. 10-2 or whatever they win is incredible. But now you got to go to 11 wins, 12 wins. So, but yeah, I think it's always it's a mixture of both the coaches and the players. Y'all kind of want to grow together. Unfortunately, in the world of social media, Doug and Rob, they don't give you no mulligans anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, Ben, Rob, can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ben, if this isn't challenging the memory bank too much, I'm a huge Steve Spurrier fan over the years. I'm probably reflective that I'm a little longer in the tooth. But if you have one, what's one of the most memorable moments, either funny or competitive, that comes back to you from your time when Coach Spurrier was coaching your team at Florida?
I think you hit on the head that he is funny. Like he's a really, really funny guy, because you got to think the world is going to give you a perception that there's nothing you can do about it. Once the world calls you something, that's it. You're either going to live up to it or not. Steve Spurrier used to do what we call the 2-minute tan. He comes out on the field, he takes his shirt off, and in his mind, with them Florida sun rays, he'll put his hand on, and in his mind, he'll say, "I don't need no tan in bed." He said, "I just use what God, and I use what God has given him." In his mind, that's all he needs. But as much as Steve Spurrier won, he never talked about winning. He never did. He always talked about, if we don't play up to our abilities, if we don't go out and execute. And what I appreciate the most about Coach Spurrier was he's larger than life. Even now, he found a way to have a personal relationship with everybody. It wasn't obviously it's going to be different with them quarterbacks. They will probably have something different to say because they got to deal with him. But man, he was a down-to-earth dude. Like, he just was an offensive genius. And when you playing for a guy that got plays that work with anybody in there, you just want to go out there and make sure that you don't wreck this Ferrari. But Coach Spurrier, man, he's a class act. Listen, I know people don't like to say it, but to me, he has that Deion Sanders charisma. He is a media darling. Like, anybody that says, "I'm a coach of South Carolina as long as we got players, and when we start sucking, I'm gone." Well, you don't like his honesty, but he did. When the Clownies and the Carnershaws left, he left too. But the indoor facility, named after Spurrier. The Florida field, named after Spurrier. I think he got a new restaurant with a you know who I feel bad for? We said it from the jump. Steve Spurrier Jr. got to hate his name and daddy because he got to live up to that all the time. But no, Coach Spurrier is the greatest because he didn't take it as serious as the world did. As serious as people took him, yes, he's going to go through 2 headsets. Kirby Smart is challenging him with the biggest visor I've ever seen. That's the biggest visor on the planet, and it resides in Athens. But he just did it his way, man. He was, and I can appreciate the fact that I guarantee you, as serious as people took him, he was probably laughing at the media. He like, these people really, really think I care about the stuff they say. I make millions of dollars to coach 19-year-olds. Man, I'm living the life, man. I'm not worried about what y'all talking about.
He ain't nothing but a winner. Before I go, Rob, I would just say, Ben, and I believe this to be absolute truth, Spurrier, which is saying something in the modern era, there's no evidence that he didn't recruit and win the right way without getting into the dark gray areas, if you know what I mean. And he felt strongly about that when he might have suspected that some of the big championship programs weren't necessarily keeping it between the lines quite. I'm not saying Florida or any school is lily white. None of us are. But Spurrier just brought a lot of class to the college football game.
Made you want to be a coach. I would want. Listen, I would want to be a coach. You get coached under a guy like that. I don't want to live up those type of expectations. I say this all the time. If you win at Florida, great. If you win at Georgia, great. If you win at Duke, you can coach. That man won at Duke, so I don't need no more evidence. Nothing against Duke, but he won ACC Coach of the Year when he was the Duke Blue Devils head football coach.
Yeah, and that
the Nick Troupe Skadoop, right?
Yeah, I got that nickname when I was in the NFL. And this thing about nicknames, it don't matter what your grandma called you, it's what your team called you. Ain't no coming on the team saying my family called me, don't care. We gonna call you what we want to call you. So shout out to Drew Bennett who gave me that name when I got a touchdown in Nashville.
Wow.
Guys, all the best. Thanks for letting me hang out, Rob.
Hey, love it. Doug Dean, AU Dose. We'll talk this week and have you on again. Hopefully you can be on the round table with us Saturday. Have a good one. Ben, that's funny. My youngest son he's 22 now. His nickname is Peanut, and boy, we call him the Peen. Peanut. And he got that from his grandmother, who said when he wakes up in the morning, he's like a little peanut or just a little bean, just jumping up and around. But it's funny when I would call him that around his friends. He'll come over there and give me the old Vulcan grip or put me in a headlock, and I think Max is 6'1" now. He's big. He spent the last 3 summers out in Jackson Hole and Moose, Wyoming, mountain biking and mountain climbing and running and working out all the time. Great kid. But yeah, it's funny, the nicknames that parents give them versus what their friends, their peers, their teammates call them. And I think you really said something that hit about Steve Spurrier. He never really talked about winning. It reminds me of legendary Auburn coach Shug Jordan having fought in North Africa against Rommel, landed at Sicily, was wounded at Omaha or Utah Beach at the Normandy invasion, and went and fought in Okinawa. Never once did he ever, according to his players, invoke his military record ever in his entire coaching career, 25 years at Auburn. He did smoke a few cigarettes on the sidelines. I'm sure today they'd want to run him out of town. But he did, before the Auburn-Georgia game in 1971, both teams undefeated late in the year, said after the night before the Georgia fans were banging on the hotel, and when they got there, they kept him up all night. He said, "Hey, gentlemen, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil out here today on the gridiron, because I'm the biggest, baddest, meanest son of a biscuit in the whole damn valley. Let's go win." And they did, but he never, ever invoked his military record. His friend Ralph Jordan Jr. is a good friend of mine. And oh my God, Eve, his daughter-in-law. But he never, ever invoked that. And that's really cool. I met Steve Spurrier back at the Saban Legacy Dinner back in this past May in Birmingham at the club up on the mountain. And God, and Steve Melnick introduced him. And you know who Steve Melnick is, the Gator down there, did a lot of work on PGA golf. Mm-hmm. He was walking up on the podium to introduce Steve Spurrier, and he tripped and went airborne and almost landed in Steve Spurrier's lap. But that was a wild night. We're going to talk a lot more with Ben Troupe, Gator great, ESPN Coastal in Savannah. Greatest hat collection of any guest we have, hands down, right after this on Sidelines.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House Equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, let's get going back here with Ben Troupe. And Ben, I was talking to Audrey, my wife and producer and CFO during the break about the Dreamland barbecue. And it's funny, I first went there, to the one in Tuscaloosa. I don't know if that's the original one or not, but it was started in 1958 by John Bishop, and the white bread and the sauce. The sauce is really good. It's a different kind of barbecue. Everywhere you go, there's different kind of barbecue. Where you were over there in Savannah, and when my dad graduated from Auburn, they sent him, he was architecture degree from Auburn, but he was ROTC second lieutenant. They shipped him over to Hinesville, Georgia, over there to Fort Stewart, Camp Stewart, they called it back then. And about 3 months in, he said an order came down, no more troops to Korea. So he spent the next few years starting forest fires and putting them out and doing stuff just to, have something to do. And they all, 5 of them, got in a car and went down what's now Interstate 95 to Jacksonville for the Gator Bowl in 1955. Auburn had the X and Y quarterbacks, Jim Pyburn, Vince Dooley. Vanderbilt beat Auburn, I think, in that game 25-13. But he said that Savannah and the whole, coastal area, what they call the low country, they got low country stew, some of the best seafood around. So I always talk about Miss Wilkes because everybody knows about that place. But we got listeners all over the place. I'm getting some texts right now, a guy saying, hey, I've got to go to Savannah on a business trip. Where would Ben recommend I go to get the best food and fill my belly? And if I want to get liquored up, throw that in too. And of course, not drive, of course.
Yeah. You definitely want to go to River Street. Because the thing about River Street is it's everything you want. You got the cobblestones. They putting up new restaurants down there, all the time. Downtown Savannah, you forget you in, because Savannah's so spread out. Yeah. You forget you in Savannah. Now, if you want to get away from Savannah a little bit, but you can go out there to Pooler, Georgia. Pooler, Georgia it's one street, and they made it for, the trucking industry is huge because you got one of the biggest ports on the East Coast in Savannah, Georgia, and them truckers be coming through. But I would say in Savannah, it's hard to just pick one spot because now we got food trucks now. You got so many pop-up mom and pop shops. It's a catfish joint down here. I can never remember the name. It's like it's been on, it's like it don't even look like it's open. It's like a all yellow, but it's one of those places, Rob, to where it's the simplest thing. They're gonna give you their little secret sauce. They're gonna give you a catfish fillet with mayo, mustard, maybe some like lettuce and tomato. And listen, they give it to you and you're supposed to take it to go. They'll say, just go ahead and bite it. I guarantee you're gonna eat the whole sandwich right there in front of you. You're gonna bite it one time. And next thing you know, hey man, can I get another one? Because this one about to be gone. This is just, and that's what you can appreciate about Georgia. We're simple, but really, really good food. And ain't gonna be no shrubbery. It ain't gonna be no whole bunch of, green. We'll put a little parsley on it because we can identify what parsley is. Yeah. But it's gonna be dead, deep fried, and extremely good. So like you say, River Street, if you want to really get just like what the city really is, but it's so many places. Savannah's so big. The closer you get to the water in Savannah, the better that seafood is.
Well, it is, and I love if I go to Hilton Head, I've been over there a few times, and there's a restaurant there called the Quarter Deck in Hilton Head right on the water. But that low country stew over there, I love seafood. But you ever watch that show on SEC Network with John T. Edge called True South, where that show. And, John T. Edge went to Georgia. I think he's from a little town in Georgia. I think he and the crew that put that show together, it's incredible. You remember seeing the one, in fact, Audrey and I were going through Brownsville, Tennessee, which is, 57 miles from Memphis. And remember Miss Helen in Brownsville, Tennessee, the lady that had the barbecue restaurant, and they had the guy that had all the structures built, it's like a junk collection, whatever, and all that stuff. We tried to go there. She's closed on Sundays, but you find when you go to these off the beaten path restaurants, the absolute greatest food that you can put in your mouth. I know, Jackie Sherrill was telling us on the show this past year about Coach Bryant's daily routine. And Tommy Kane, stay on here with us, Ben. Tommy Kane, you'll love this guy, from Wilmington, North Carolina, lifelong, Wolfpack guy, played at NC State. I love getting the two of y'all on together. This is going to be fun because I'm gonna ask some questions and listen to y'all's responses, because you are student athletes. You have paid your dues, and you get better every time you're on here because you're real, you're genuine, and you got a lot of honesty in what you say. But
don't use that word student too liberally there.
Okay. But Jackie Sherrill was talking about Coach Bryant's daily routine. And, he was one of 12 children from Fordyce, Arkansas, Morrow Bottoms, and grew up really poor. And went to Alabama because he had seen Alabama in the Rose Bowl in 1925. And, he would get away when he lived in Tuscaloosa. Jackie Sherrill said he'd get up at 4 a.m, eat breakfast at 5 a.m. at the Holiday Inn on McFarland Boulevard. 6 o'clock, he's in the office till 11 o'clock, staff meetings. 11 to 12, he'd go study the stock market. And at 12 o'clock, he'd sneak off, and he liked Archibald's Barbecue, Druid City Drugstore, but he liked to go to places you would never think in a million years he'd go to, but that's where you're going to find your best food. The best barbecue I think I've ever had may have been from an old man in Turl, Arkansas, that cooked out of an old bank vault. He was a farmer, and he put 4 kids through college, 2 through Arkansas State, 2 through Arkansas. And the barbecue was so tender, he'd put it on a bun about the size of a plate, and it would just fall apart in your hands. But it was, he cooked it for about 15, 18 hours, just low and slow. So I'm getting hungry talking about all this John T. Edge and True South, but people in the South know when we get together to watch games, we're going to eat, we're going to drink, we're going to have a lot of fun, and we just got to be careful how much we eat and drink so we don't have to ride around on a scooter. But we got great food down here. But Ben, when Tommy gets on here, we talk a lot ACC, and you talk a lot of SEC and ACC, I'm sure, in Savannah. I want to get your thoughts first, Tommy, and then I want Ben's response. ACC basketball versus SEC basketball. Is it just because we've had a transition with Roy Williams leaving and Coach K stepping down? Is what's going on? Because I still believe, top to bottom, tradition-wise, there is no league in America that reveres college basketball more than the ACC.
Well, I think that's true. I mean, especially if you've grown up in the South. I mean, that's, but at the end of the day, it's just like SEC football, and the conference is so dominant all the time, right? They always got the best of the best. They're used to winning. ACC basketball over the course of the history, you could pick out a year here and there where maybe, that wasn't up to the snuff like it normally is, but over the course of history, ACC basketball has always been in the mix as the best conference in the country. So that's just like, and that breeds from a very young age as a young man watching it and watching the 83 team of NC State, and then the 82 team with Michael Jordan at Chapel Hill, and those great teams come up and go. So you, as a young man, because you're watching those great teams play, develop a passion for the game, develop a passion for being a fan of that game, and it becomes like this religion, so to speak. Much like the SEC in football, right, Ben? I mean, like, you grow up in the Southeast, and you watch Alabama, and you watch Georgia, and you watch Tennessee, and these great teams as a young man growing up. So then when you're old enough and that becomes a religion, it becomes a passion, and it's all because of the quality of the programs and the winning that those conferences do in that particular sport. I mean, it could very well be flipped, right? The SEC could have been dominant in basketball years ago, and the ACC could have been dominant in football over the decades, and it could be completely reversal. But that's why you have the passion and the dominance and the following in the SEC for football, because of their success year after year after year. And not always the same team, but success. Same thing with the ACC. You have Virginia winning a national championship one year.
Yep.
You have Duke and Carolina winning them all the time. You have NC State sprinkled in there in the early 80s. You got Georgia Tech making a few runs to the Final Four, the Bobby Cremins days. That's why those conferences have the following.
Yeah. Ben?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it doesn't compare. I mean, people talk about the gauntlet in college basketball. It's the ACC. I mean, not to give any credit, but Leonard Hamilton is a very, very good coach at Florida State.
Right.
Problem is he got to play Syracuse. He got to play North Carolina State. He got to play North Carolina. So what happens is he can have a great year, right? My best friend BJ is a Florida State fan. I said, BJ, when will your life be complete? He said, if Florida State goes to a Final Four, bro, don't even ask me. Because what happens is you understand how prestigious it is. I mean, the great Carmelo Anthony, right? He goes to Q's. 1 year, wins it all, Boeheim. Legendary, right? Because I remember college basketball for two things. I remember when the Big East, why? Because they got the tournament in Madison Square, right? And it's ACC. ACC basketball to me is, if I'm getting recruited and somebody goes, where are you going? I say, listen, I'm going to one of those schools in North Carolina. I don't care if it's North Carolina State, Duke, or North Carolina. I'm picking one. When people say, because it is the creme de la creme, man. I mean, they're going to make you know there are rivalries in sports. Duke and North Carolina, Tobacco Road, man, it don't get much better than that. You grew up watching those teams like you rooting for them. Like, dude, you fall in, so, I mean, my son's grandfather went to North Carolina. And every time I mention a Duke player, he started making up stuff. Oh, they're entitled. They ain't that tough. I'm like, stop it. Like, just stop with the nonsense. But, ACC basketball, that is the creme de la creme.
And, to be honest with you, too, Rob, if you grew up in North Carolina like I did and live in that atmosphere and what that is, I mean, that is what it's like living down here in Atlanta where I live now for college football. Yeah. You turn on sports talk radio, it dominates the airwaves, right? You know what I mean? We're in the middle of college basketball season and you get a blip. All they keep talking about is all the transfers in college football and everything else. You get a blip on the radar of the college basketball scene. It's the complete opposite in North Carolina and up in that area. The college sports talk radio is all about the basketball, and you get a couple blurbs here and there about football. But it's just it's awesome. I love the way it is because the ACC has had some great years, and it's I'm glad I'm a fan of it. So
yeah, and my middle son just moved to Charlotte 3 weeks ago. He's going to be working up there the next 3 or 4 years, and I love basketball. I love college basketball. Like Sidelines is college football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, college. Inevitably, we're going to talk NFL, NBA, Major League, because these guys go up to the league, and we have guys that played at the next level that are on the show a lot. But I'm with Ben. It's ACC, and there's nothing in America like it. Tobacco Road, NC State, 1974. When I'm trying to think here. Norm Sloan was there. Was Monty Towell on that team in 74?
David Thompson and Tom Burleson. Yeah.
And so Norm Sloan was coaching at Florida in the 80s when I was there, and he wore this plaid jacket. It was really loud. The Florida coach, Ben, and every time he would stand up on the sidelines on the bench, everybody would say, "Sit down, Norm." It was the cheer at the Coliseum. But I think college basketball, the way it's been presented, and Dick Vitale and the people, I think Seth Greenberg, by the way, is a great analyst, former Virginia Tech coach. Yeah. And my brother-in-law played college football for Virginia Tech in the mid-'70s for 4 years. And they had a great staff up there. I think Danny Ford was on the staff, Jimmy Sharp, Charlie Coffey. And you talk about a program, Ben, that they woke up. A sleeping giant was what Frank Beamer did there at Virginia Tech. And they've lost that momentum. I read some stuff from some coaches that remain anonymous. It said they're not recruiting the kind of tough blue collar kids. Remember they had the lunch pail on the sidelines.
Yeah.
You better bring it. Why did they stop doing that? Because Blacksburg and Virginia Tech, I've got 2 nieces and a nephew that also graduated from there. My sister lives in Roanoke, the Star City, I might add. But why would you stop doing what works? Because I know people do that in sales. They go out of business.
You got to put a gate around the city of Virginia. You talking about Virginia Tech, man? Oh my freaking God! What the Michael Vicks of the world, the D'Angelo Halls of the world, Marcus Vick. I remember
Bruce Smith.
Kevin Smith. I remember nobody wanted to play Virginia Tech. Yeah, it's almost like Hey man, it's crazy. I've known some of the Percy Harvin. We appreciate y'all letting them come down the floor. Plexico Burris, right? Mike Tomlin. Like you got an area. I mean, yeah. Allen Iverson. I mean, listen, Virginia. I used to play with Virginia guys. It's only about 10 or 15 of them, but they're some of the greatest. I mean, and I'll never understand, because when I got recruited, there was no social media. So it's like, hey man, it's all word of mouth. What nowadays is who's the most attractive? Who could get me the most exposure? Who could get me the most money? But you see it's working out. You see Beamer ball in the SEC. People thought, how is Beamer ball going to work in it? Working out pretty good right now for South Carolina, you know. So Spencer Rattler's coming back. I just think that the importance of keeping in homegrown talent in the state, you can't beat it, because I'm trying to tell you, I've been missing Michael Vick since he left Atlanta. I love Matt Ryan, but I'm telling y'all, there will never be another Michael Vick. I don't care what love Lamar Jackson, love Justin Fields and these guys. You ain't Michael Vick.
No, I agree with you, Ben. I agree with you. I mean, there's a lot of talent up in that Virginia area. And, I think the lunch pail was Bub Foster, right? Was the one that started it up there. They're bringing it back. Pretty sure they brought it back this year. But I remember doing the road trip show when I was doing it. We went up there and we actually got to look in the lunch pail and take a hold of that thing. And it was all beat up, and it was the whole idea of like you coming to work, right? But the funny thing is, the kids of this day don't even get that relationship. They don't understand that relation of like bringing your lunch pail to go to work. Right? That doesn't make any sense to them, because nobody brings their lunch. They don't even carry lunches to work anymore, right? But but Ben's exactly right. There's so much talent up in that Virginia area, and you just got to try to keep that local talent there intact. And I think for college coaches, that's just like the hardest thing to do, is to try to get the local guys to stay in a lot of the areas. I mean, heck, I was just listening to the radio coming in today, and Georgia Tech basketball was god-awful this year. And they were talking about how they can't get any of the local – they don't have one kid like hardly on their roster from Atlanta. And Atlanta is full of college basketball athletes. I mean, you can't – it's ridiculous. So, that's a challenge. And Virginia Tech, man, game day atmosphere, Enter Sandman, when they come out in the field and they're playing Enter Sandman, everybody's and jumping up and down, ringing their keys. It's as good as it gets. Now, I'll tell you this. If you ever want to rob a bank, go to Blacksburg on a Saturday, wait for the game to start. You can walk right in that bank and walk out, and nobody will ever see you, because they're all at the game.
They are. And there's
the whole city shuts down.
Yeah. I look, Virginia, the state of Virginia, there's a lot of people there. And you talk about the great defensive lineman, Bruce Smith, another Virginia product. And I mean, schools used to go and recruit all over the country into Virginia. In 1987, when Virginia Tech hired Frank Beamer, it all changed. Hey, more with Ben Troupe, Tommy Kane, Rob Browne on Sidelines right after this quick commercial message.
Hey everyone, my name is David Wisdom.
And I'm Shelby McNeil, and we're attorneys with Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short, your local Auburn law firm. Established in 1959 right in the heart of Auburn, Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short has grown in response to our clients' legal needs. We're a full-service law firm focusing on the legal issues our clients face.
We take pride in providing our clients with exceptional legal services, ongoing communication, and skilled representation. If you have any questions about our services, please give us a call or visit our website today.
All right, we got a great roundtable going with Ben Troupe and Tommy Kane. And, Ben, you look at programs. I'm going to go back to South Carolina. You talk about Shane Beamer. Man, that guy is when he got hired, he's been at Oklahoma. He's been around Steve Spurrier. His father, Frank Beamer, pretty cool guy. I mean, who wouldn't love playing for a guy like Frank Beamer? But it took them 6 or 7 years, guys, to really get going. And when they went to the Sugar Bowl in 94, I think they played Texas. Virginia Tech took about 50,000 fans down to New Orleans. And I told people, I've been talking to them, obviously, because my brother-in-law, Rick, played football there. I've been following Virginia Tech back when they were in the old Metro Conference, Castle Coliseum for basketball, built like the Roman Coliseum. It just goes straight up, Tommy. If you've been in it, if you lean forward in your seat, you're falling on the floor. But man, they put themselves on the map then. Then they played for the national championship, Ben, with Michael Vick in 99 against Florida State. Seminoles played 3 straight years, 98, 99, and 2000. But man, how good, and I want your thoughts on this, Ben, and then Tommy, how good South Carolina, 3 11-win seasons in a row with Steve Spurrier. You know, you had some great guys, Lattimore, Jadeveon Clowney. You had some, pretty darn good players there. Garcia at quarterback, but hard to maintain it. Clemson got on a roll. It looks like Clemson might be slipping a little bit. South Carolina, what's the ceiling on that program? I want you, Ben, and then Tommy.
I think they can be as good as they want to be. I think when you think most schools don't really have something in their recent history to look towards. I mean, Florida has never had – the University of Florida has never had a number 1 overall pick. Jadeveon Clowney was a number 1 overall pick coming out of South Carolina. That team was loaded. You talk about Jadeveon Clowney, Connor Shaw, Stephon Gilmore, DJ Swearinger, Alshon Jeffrey, Marcus. They had it topped about – think about a guy, like Jadeveon Clowney. He's from Rock Hill. Rock Hill and Charlotte are right there together.
Yeah.
Rock Hill is South Carolina. You think about Steve Spurrier saying, I want to get the number 1 recruit in the country. And South Carolina is like one of those sleepers. South Carolina is a sleeper giant because they got to run the gauntlet of the Floridas, of the Tennessees, of the Georgias. But the last thing you want to do is let them do what Clemson did. Let them realize how good they can be. They'll be good for a long time because if they could just, like I said, they got to compete with the North Carolina guys. For the quarterbacks, because Sam Hartman, right, and those type of guys, and Sam Howell, who went to North Carolina, that's who South Carolina got to be able to get in there. Because I love guys like Spencer Rattler, but I need guys right here, in this 2-state area to be able to stay home. But yeah, the Gamecock football is serious, man. I just think that if they can realize how good they want to be, they could be a problem for a long time.
Yeah, I agree with that, Tommy.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question. One of the great things about South Carolina football is, they pack that stadium. I mean, their fans are passionate about it. That's the only show in town, right down there in Columbia, and they want to win. And when you got a program that's got the passionate fan base, it's got the school behind you, and they see what the other schools in the SEC have been doing with the amount of enrollment they get because they're winning, and how the enrollment costs go up and their standards go up. If you're winning college football, it's better for the school all the way around, financially, enrollment, everything else. So South Carolina's seeing that, and I think they're buying into that and understanding it now. And and plus, there's something to be said for sticking with a coach, and giving him a couple of years to build his program. I think that's one of the problems that we see in all sports, in college level, basketball included. Coaches, if they don't win in a year or two, oh, he's out, he's not good enough, get him out. Man, you got to build a program. I mean, college football is a program. There's so many moving parts. There's so many coaches that got to get. Your staff's got to get built up. We got to recruit the kind of players you want to recruit in order to put your system in. And South Carolina is stuck with it, and it's paying off dividends. And we'll see what happens in the next couple of years. I think, I was looking at their schedule for next season. They've got a couple of tough non-conference games, and then of course they get into the SEC mix, and we'll see what happens again. But South Carolina wants to win and be good, and that's what you have to have. That's the magic potion right there.
Yeah, and that got interesting text from the ghost of Dwayne Allman, Albany, Georgia. Here says kids today more familiar with Venmo than lunch pails. Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
It is. You know what's cool is we had a man that worked for our family, Henry B. Growing up. He used to always say, "Rob Jr., it ain't the doing in life that's so bad; it's the dreading. Let's get to work." And that is such great. Hey, I had to go to the dentist yesterday. I mean, you just dread going to the dentist, but I got to tell you, Dr. Stuart Hudsmith, he's incredible. And his whole practice in Memphis, it is. And you got out of there, you're like, because, your teeth, that's your front porch to your body's health, just like your athletic programs are the front porch to your university. And can't put it.
Did you just get a free filling because you mentioned him on the radio? Did you get a free filling? You got an NIL deal with them? You got an NIL deal with your dentist?
Audrey does. Because she's known him forever. But hey, I want to switch now, Ben. And this is going to be for Tommy. I want to ask him this because you look at NC State. I look at NC State. They've won a couple of national championships in basketball. They have a rabid fan base. Yeah. I think they have a lot of money. They're up there in that research triangle and all. And Ben, let's start with you, and then I want Tommy to close it out there. How good can NC State be? Dave Doran in his 9th year there. I mean, I look at the crowds. I watch ACC Network. What I want to see is a regular season SEC Big Ten football games, also SEC, ACC, more of it, because it's so different when you play in the regular season, Ben.
NC State is one of those teams that they head scratchers, right? Because they're really, really good. They'll beat a really, really good team and they'll lose to a bad team. It's like it's a head scratcher when it comes to them. Dave Dorn, if you've never met him before, listen, he don't like talking to the media. Zero. Like I'm talking about, I met Dave Dorn at the AC Media Days like so many years back. And when I tell you he's answering the question and selling, get on to the next one. Like I'm only doing, he is the Marshawn Lynch of coaches. I don't like doing interviews, but
that's right.
Listen, we got two Sebro boys. They got twins that go to NC State from my hometown of Swainsboro, GA. So you know I appreciate anybody that's coming to the backwoods of Georgia, pulling them country boys up there to North Carolina State. I mean, how good can North Carolina State be? Phillip Rivers, right? I mean, how good was he? When he was there. I mean, Gleason and those guys. But they got to find a way to say, hey, if I'm good enough to be in a game with a Clemson, got to finish the deal. Good enough to be in a game, with Florida State, got to finish the deal because the ACC, I think, is wide open. I mean, I know Clemson, they're a couple of years removed from being the dominant. I think a team like NC State could be like, take the bull by the horns and become that team to beat because they recruit like nobody's business. They recruit well. You mentioned the Rabbit fan base, but they can't, like I said, you can't almost beat Clemson and then lay an egg, against Syracuse. Nothing against Qs, right? Love them. Yeah. But I just think that NC State, they got too much talent to be coming up short of certain games they should be winning.
Tommy?
How much time you got, Rob?
We got 10 minutes. Let's go.
You got me on my soapbox now talking about my Wolfpack. But
I love it. That's what we do.
But I tell you what, Ben freaking nailed it on the head, man. It's just frustrating as a fan. You go in there and you beat, we have preseason ranked top 10 this year coming in. All these expectations. And as a State fan, we all know that they ain't going to live up to it. It's just not going to happen. Like, we're going to do something. We're going to beat all the teams that we're not supposed to beat, and then we'll go lose to, like, Syracuse. No, again, nothing against Syracuse, or like to a team that's like, at the bottom of the barrel of the conference, and we'll lose to them on a Saturday, and all of a sudden we'll just fall apart. Now, granted, this year, Wolfpack had a phenomenal quarterback starting the year, as preseason ACC Player of the Year, and Devin Leary, and he gets hurt and he goes out. And then our backup quarterback gets hurt. And then our backup gets hurt. I mean, we struggled with the quarterback position and still ended up having a respectable year. So, hats off to the coaches for pulling that out of the hat. But Ben's right. Like, it's just a matter of putting it all together in one season and really getting over that hump. And we've had a couple of years when we've done that. And the Phillip Rivers years come to mind. We beat Notre Dame down in, I believe it was the Gator Bowl, and Notre Dame was highly ranked, and Phillip Rivers went down there and we smoked them and really thought we were on that level. But my next thing I want to say to you guys, and we're just much going back to what we were talking about with the SEC and being successful year after year after year, is you can't just have one good year and build and think that the program is going to take off. You got to have 1 year, a good year, a good year, a good year, good year, good year, and kind of keep building. And I think NC State is actually at that point. Again, they stuck with Dave Dorn to be the coach for a couple of years. He's ninth or 10th year now, like you said. He wasn't great at first. Everybody was like, get him out of there, get him out of there. Get him. Stick with him, let him build his program, get the players in he wants to do, and get the right coaches on the staff and start building that program. So now that, hey, as a fan, every year for the last 3 or 4 years, we've been in the talks of maybe trying to win the division. Now, granted, ACC is going away from the divisions, which would be huge. It's going to be really good for us because we're always in the same division with Clemson. And, that was our Super Bowl every year. We had to beat Clemson or we weren't going to the ACC championship game. And damn it, we did it a couple of years and then we lose to somebody else and forget it all fall apart. So we'll see. But I agree with Ben too. He does a great job recruiting. We get some good athletes in. We just got a huge pickup in the transfer portal a couple of weeks ago with the quarterback out of Virginia coming in, Armstrong. He was a stud 2 years ago with his offensive coordinator. The offensive coordinator left and went to Syracuse, and his numbers fell off like in half. And now that offensive coordinator is now our offensive coordinator at State. So Brendan Armstrong jumped in the transfer portal and is coming now to play State and be. So we have a stud quarterback coming in. I really believe he's a lefty. He's going to be back with his offensive coordinator. So, I mean, there's a lot of parts to the puzzle there. You just got to put the puzzle together and keep it together once you get it together.
Now, that's a great take on it, because NC State, you look at it, that is a program with a passionate fan base.
Oh.
You got a lot of engineers, so that means you got a lot of money. I know Auburn University has 13 colleges, but the College of Engineering, in the last fundraising drive, they did a $1 billion campaign, gave $207 million came from engineering. Everybody talks about engineers. I get all the jokes about brown suits and hush puppies and pocket protectors. And as my dad says, as an architect, we couldn't do anything without them because they make things move. But the old joke is CPAs and engineers aren't boring people. They just get excited about boring things. But I think of Howard Sprague, people like that. But Howard, eventually did move out of his house when he was about 50 from his mother. But got to ask you this now. Start with you, Ben. Georgia Tech. I grew up, y'all are old enough to remember, Georgia Tech, Paul Johnson every 3 years would have a really good team. He was a tough, hard-nosed coach. I remember Bobby Ross winning the national championship there in 1990. I always liked Bobby Ross because he's a graduate of VMI. I remember when they played Auburn November 6th, 1983. Auburn won 35-23. Donnie Humphrey recovered a strip sack in the end zone at the end of the game because it was a 28-23 game. Boomer Esiason was on that team. That was Tommy Agee, Lionel Little Train James, and Bo Jackson. Agee had 219 yards rushing that day, including a 61-yarder right up the gut as a fullback, but Auburn had 3 backs over 100 yards that day. Georgia Tech's got tradition, 4 or 5 national championships. John Heisman coached there for, 15 years. Ben, we got about 5 minutes left, so let's break it down. Why can't Georgia Tech commit to winning, making the commitment to win in football like Alabama has and Georgia has and Florida has?
Because I think you said it, because of Georgia. Georgia has they've gotten so out of this world, and they're not slowing down. But you talk about the tradition. Look, we always talk about this on my show. Yes, because of what Stetson Bennett just did, he is the greatest quarterback to come out of Georgia in a long time. Before that, it was Joe Hamilton. And it was not close, and that's taking nothing away from the Aaron Murrays. That's taking nothing away from all Quincy Carter and Mathews Stafford. But you still got Calvin Johnson, right? Not arguing. One of the greatest
Megatron
players ever, ever. I mean,
one of the greatest athletes ever.
We talked about nicknames. Yeah. Your nickname is Megatron. You see what I'm saying? And this is the thing about Atlanta. I mean, the thing about Georgia Tech. You're in Atlanta. There isn't a college that's in a place to where these players could benefit from so much. Meaning, just say you don't make it as a football player. You could be walking out of school. They go Coca-Cola. They go Chick-fil-A. They go $100,000 a year. I know to them that don't seem like a lot of money. It is. And I just think the thing about Georgia Tech is when you get a Jahmyr Gibbs, you can't let him leave and go to Alabama. Yeah. You got to keep those type of guys on campus. You got to find a way to take care of Sims, your quarterback, because a team like Georgia Tech doesn't get enough big-name athletes for them to go to other schools. You got to keep them in-house. You got to take care of them. And just like we were saying with NC State, man, you are a year away from realizing your potential, but you got to work on consistency because the greatest teams in the country, they're just the most consistent. Yeah, they got talent. I get that part, but they work at it, man. We are consistent. And we are persistent at that. We don't let up at all, because I know David Pollack told Nick Saban that the new standard in college football is in Athens. He's lost his mind. No. Y'all had 2 great seasons, and unfortunately, Stetson Bennett just had his 39th birthday. He got to go on. He can't play college football. He got to move on. No, I would just say Georgia Tech, to me, it's not a sleeping giant. They're just not realizing their potential. There isn't a better place to play football and get an education at Georgia Tech, even though I know that workload as a student, that's probably the roughest part.
Yeah. You got to take calculus. And want to say, hey man, most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us, and we're the most blessed country in the world. And remember that. Go out and help people, man. It'll help you. It'll help them. But don't give to get, give to give out of the goodness of your heart. We're blessed to have great guests like Ben Troupe and Tommy Kane on here. Tommy, close out with your take on Georgia Tech. And it's an honor doing this every day. And thank both of y'all. Incredible insight. I'm going to start pairing y'all up again more and more. Y'all are, this is like getting the band back together. What'd they offer Zeppelin? 800 million? What's it going to take to get y'all back on next week? But Tommy,
I'll have my agent reach out to you.
That's okay. Ramblin' Wreck. Let's close it out.
Oh man. I agree with Ben, but there's so many points, but I think the biggest thing is what he said at the very last end. the academics at Georgia Tech are no joke. It is a hard recruit to sometimes get the really top athletes in there, knowing that they got to study and go to those classes. But, I think with Brent Key now running the ship there and a former player, the passion's going to be there. They want to win. But it just comes down to getting those players in. And like Ben said, get them in and keep them in. Like the Sims and those guys that they let go. You just got to get the talent and you got to keep it. And that's the world we live in now in college football. All the coaches, they don't really recruit the freshmen. I mean, the high school kids, they're recruiting their own players to stay. It's a different world, guys, a different world.
Yeah, and Ben, you're right. Atlanta, right there on Interstate 85, across from the Varsity Inn. The health plate there, a chili cheese dog, burgers and fries. I mean, it's an incredible atmosphere. Tommy,
Rob, do you ever notice all your conversations always kind of circle back to food? I'm just saying.
And I'm not a big guy.
But barbecue. Now we got Varsity.
Yeah, but it is really good. I mean, but that's the thing about it. And we found a new Thai restaurant, Lotus Blossom in Stuttgart, Arkansas the other day. So we're gonna have to go check it out when we were there Friday. But man, both of y'all nailed it though. About a program like Georgia Tech in Atlanta, 6.5 million people, and you've got so much going for you. But you know what? Sometimes people forget to do in selling, forget to ask for the order. Keep your people at home. Be amazed what you can do, but you got to write your own narrative. Great show, everybody. Until then, have a great day. Be blessed. We'll see you tomorrow. We're out of here.
See you guys.